I'm here with Director Alviti of your Rhode Island Department of Transportation. Let the trucks go by for a second.
Sure.
I've got to ask you a question. The federal court case is going on right now.
Oh, yes, it is.
And my understanding is you testified.
I did.
Yesterday, I believe. Just two quick questions. How is the case going from your perspective as someone I'm sure you're paying attention, or your people are paying attention very closely? I know it's litigation, so you really can't dive into the deep dive, but what are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, all along, we retained at the beginning of doing the roadworks legislation when we were creating it. And you understand, you understand that the roadworks legislation is much more than just truck tolling. It is an expansive amount of legislation that controls how we do our work, how we're organized, how we spend our money. Transparency issues are in there. A whole array of things we embedded into the legislature to make not only fix our bridges, but to fix DOT too. Mm-hmm. And at the very inception of that, through the entire process of creating the legislation, I had a group of probably up to 80 people at one time, many of us on a daily basis crammed into a conference room. That included legal experts, financial experts, engineering, structural engineering, environmental engineering, planners, and finance planners. All in the room at the same time, and communications people. All in the room at the same time, so that as we began to formulate what kind of policies we would need in order to fund this massive infrastructure improvement that we're doing, particularly the bridges, how much it would cost, what would be the best way to do it to make it cost the least amount of money and give us the best product, and then was there any difference between what we needed to do and what it would cost and what the traditional funding would provide to us. And we found that we had 90% of what we needed to do with the infrastructure improvements in our 10-year plan. We were only lacking about 10% to be able to get to the mission of correcting our bridge problem in 10 years. That 10% was about $45 million. So that's when we began to discuss what is the most equitable way for us to create the revenue stream that would fund it. Would it be additional gas tax? Would it be a whole array of other things? And as the data began coming in from different people and we discussed it as a group, one of the ideas that began to emerge in data that came to us was that heavy commercial vehicles like trucks, and when you're looking at bridges in particular, in many ways highways too, but we had a bridge problem, right? When you look at bridges, the use of a bridge is proportional, when we engineers look at bridges, proportional to the destruction of it. The destruction of the bridge structure over time is really the using up of that resource, right? And so we began to define who are the users, destructors of that resource. And data began to emerge in that process as we were going through iterations that heavy commercial vehicles did a proportionally more of the damage to our bridge structures than vehicles. That stands to reason, right? A feather dropping on a bridge has less impact than a 10-wheeler, right? Newton had it right. A small apple hitting you in the head hurts less than a big apple, right? So as that idea emerged, we began to then get more granular and look at the number of the different kind of vehicles that go on our bridges and the impact that each vehicle class had. And it worked out that in order to make the funding equitable, we defined trucks as a major contributor to destruction. And we looked on the revenue side at what all the various vehicle classes were providing to us in terms of traditional funding. We found that the smaller vehicles were paying an disproportionate share more than the big vehicles. So we had the big vehicles creating most of the damage and paying the least. bridge tolling structure for just 10%. 90% of our funding still has that inequity built into it, but this new 10% revenue stream brought that inequity back into. That's pretty much what the court is having to decide on.
So there's two issues. One is somewhat sensational, and the second is really constitutional. It's been alleged, and I've read the briefings that were submitted by both sides. It's been alleged that the initial search, I think you know where I'm going with this, that generated the underlying data that trucks had this disproportionate effect, was done literally based off of a decades-old study that was a Google search at someone's kitchen table. And then the second issue is you've got the fundamental constitutional issue, which is it unfair, is it allowable to disproportionately tax interstate commerce?
Right.
So what are your thoughts on those?
So I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm not going to share them with you since the trial is underway. It would be improper for me to speak, and particularly since the judge is sitting to having to answer those two questions.
Right.
I, as a director, of course, remain confident in our defense of those issues. I have all along. But ultimately, the judge is deciding. It is a decision that he and he alone will make, and will abide by whatever decision the court makes.
Fair enough, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking time, as always.
You bet.